Now, a lot of people ask me why I decided to hike the Te Araroa and what kind of brought me to take that on. And I've never taken on anything this big before. It was a first for me. And I didn't know if I could do it or if I couldn't do it, but I wanted to at least try, because a challenge isn't really a challenge without that possibility of failure. And nor is an adventure, for that matter, and I really wanted an adventure. I also wanted to test myself on a mental and a physical level, but I also wanted to see who I was on a personal level. I wanted to get to know myself, and I didn't really know a better way to do that than to take on a 3,000 kilometer hike alone. So due to a combination of synchronous events, I found myself living in New Zealand and with the possibility to hike the trail. The only problem was it was July, which in the Southern Hemisphere is the winter time, and not the hiking season. So I did my research and I looked into it, and I decided that it was possible. The temperatures would be dropping to -degrees at night, and there'd be a lot more rain, but it was possible, and I was there. So I would rather show up to the arena and give it a shot than to just not try at all. So on July 5th, my beautiful fiancée Brooke, and my biggest supporter throughout the whole trail, dropped me off at the top of New Zealand in the pouring rain, and I started my journey across the country. I hiked for 1,700 kilometers across the North Island without seeing a single hiker. I spent most of my nights alone, except for the few nights that I shared with mice or giant rats crawling around me. And I had my own challenges of hiking the trail in the wintertime. There was a lot of track closures, so I always had to find detours around certain trails, and estuary crossings, which were supposed to be knee to thigh high, forced me to swim across them with my backpack above me. When I finished the trail, or when I finished the North Island part of the trail, I had a hip injury that wasn't doing well. I'd run out of money, and my visa was about to expire. And I also knew that going into the South Island in the wrong season was not only dangerous, but just irresponsible. So I decided that I would stop the trail there and come back in the proper season. But there was something that I learned from doing the North Island in the wintertime. And the biggest thing that I learned was people helping people. I got to experience the trail completely on my own without anybody there. And throughout that experience, I had a lot of people take me in and take care of me unconditionally. Like in my worst, most vulnerable state, I would be stinky, dirty, hungry, and people would take me in, not expecting anything in return. Just to hear my story, that was enough. And there was something beautiful about that. People helping people is a really, really important thing. Now, when I returned to Winnipeg, with the intent to go back to New Zealand and finish the trail, the next season came around, and when I realized that I couldn't go back and finish that trail that season, I felt a weight drop down on my shoulders. And I knew that I had put this pressure on myself to complete it, but I wasn't expecting the weight to be that heavy. So when the next season came around, and I had the chance to go back and hike the trail, I did. I didn't waste any time. I bought my ticket and I took it on. And this time, I had learned from the previous time of what I needed and what I didn't need and what to expect. So my pack weight the first time around was around 25 pounds. And this time when I came back, I brought it down to 12 pounds. I had made sure that everything in my bag was being used, and at the end of every day, everything was coming out and everything was being put to use. And if it wasn't, I was not carrying it. Another thing that I learned from doing the North Island was how my body adapts to the trail. Because I had stopped and I had to start again, I was going to have to relearn how to hike for 20, 30, sometimes 50 kilometers every day nonstop, and to be able to kind of push through that. And I found that it took about 2 to 3 weeks of really listening to my body, and not just pushing through when things got really bad, but actually listening to what it needed, whether it was a stretch, whether it was food, whether it was just simply stopping for 5 minutes and working out something. But I had to really listen to what hurt and if it was going to become a bigger problem. And after about 2 to 3 weeks of dealing with that, there was a day that I woke up and my body was just ready. It's almost like it said, oh, this is what we're doing every day? Okay, this is what we need to do to survive. Let's do it. And it's not that the pain went away, and it's not that it became necessarily easier, but I had adapted to that environment. And pain was another thing on the trail that I had learned to cope with. When I look back on those really hard days where it was really painful, I never really remember the pain. Even though I might have had blisters while I was climbing like a really big mountain, or I had a hip injury that was causing me not to walk. When I think back on those days, I remember that liberating feeling of being out there and actually being on that adventure. And I would go back if I could, even though the pain was really, really bad. Now, the trail is challenging, yes, but the living is so simple. You wake up, you make coffee, you walk as far as you can in that day, and then you find flat ground, hopefully with a view, maybe in the trees, set up your tent, make a fire, read a book, and go to bed. And you repeat that for as long as you can. You would find times to take a break. If you get to a city, you take a rest day, but for the most part, you try and keep up that same schedule for as long as you can. Now, as I got closer to the end of my journey, I would use the idea of reaching that final destination as a motivation to keep me going. I would think about what it's going to be like to reach that final destination that I've been working so hard to get to. And it would push me through my days. And sometimes I'd even think about it and it would bring me to like tears in a way. And I think like, when I get there, am I going to have this big like hoorah moment? Am I going to scream as loud as I can? Like, what is that going to feel like? It's going to be so good. And the truth was, when I arrived at that final location at Bluff, the most southern part of New Zealand, it was the most underwhelming moment of my entire life. It was pouring rain, just like it was when I started, and simply put, it was over. That was it. The trail was done. And my simple life that I had been experiencing was now gone, and I was returning to my now fast-paced life back home, which was okay. But there was one thing that I learned once I finished that trail, and once I got to the end, and that's that we're all on our own journeys. We're all on our own personal journeys, and it doesn't need to be a 3,000 kilometer hike across New Zealand. It can be anything. We're all fighting our own battles. And sometimes no one will know exactly what you're going through but yourself. And you kind of need to learn to take those journeys on your own. And once I accepted this journey as a personal experience, I became so much stronger. I realized this journey belonged to me, and this was my own. And that alone allowed me to grow the most. Thank you so much for listening.